on this Wednesday. Deadlock in Israel. It continues. Elections were held yesterday in Israel. I didn't say much online because I know that their exit polls are as bad or worse than the United States exit polls. And now with 88% of the votes counted this morning, the Times of Israel reports it's unlikely that anyone has got 61 votes. The Knesset is 120 seats. You need 61 votes to secure a 5-year government. Looks to me like Israel is going to go to a 5th round of elections. Perhaps something will happen in the rest of this, but it just does not seem as though Netanyahu is going to get the 61 votes. Looks like 59. Don't think the opposition party can get over the hurdle either. That means Netanyahu continues as a prime minister facing an election, and I would imagine the elections will be 5-6 months from now as the deadlock in Israel continues. Honestly, I don't know what's ever going to break that deadlock. I've been following the Israeli elections because they are America's most reliable ally in the Middle East, and their governing system is why we have a constitutional system and not a parliamentary system, because sometimes you end up with this kind of stalemate where the ice freezes over a political landscape and nothing moves. And the pandemic did nothing to change Israeli politics. It came and it's been defeated. Israel has defeated it under the leadership of Netanyahu, but that didn't matter to his opponents. It's all about Netanyahu. It's not ideological. It's a center-right country. Indeed, some would say it's a very conservative country relative to any other country in the world. But they're stuck. They're stuck on no majority for anyone, and that wraps it up. The other major story of the day, and this is where I'm opening the phone lines, 1-800-520-1234, is about the 2 shootings. Now, I would love to talk to you about the Intel strategy. Intel is a huge American success story, terrific chip maker, and its new CEO is fast-tracking efforts to revive the semiconductor giant with a broad plan that increases outsourcing with a commitment to spend $20 billion on new factories, by the way. I believe they're all in the United States. I believe a lot of them are in Arizona. Hats off to Doug Ducey and our friends in the Desert State. Wish they'd build one in Ohio. Wish they would build one in Pennsylvania. Wish they would build them in the upper regions of the country, which are the burned over district that got left behind when Asia took away a lot of manufacturing. But wherever they build them, they're building them here. And that's crucial to solving our supply problem. That would be a good story to talk about, were it not for the 2 tragedies, the 2 shootings. But we've had 2 shootings, one in Atlanta, one in Boulder. And they're a lot more alike than they are different. A troubled young man. All shootings fall into 2 categories for me. There's a third category of self-defense, which rarely comes up anymore. There are mass shootings for ideological reasons and mass shootings for psychological reasons. Both of these appear to be mass shootings for psychological reasons. There is no ideology. There are differences in ethnicity, differences in victims, differences in targets, differences in the mental breakdown of both killers. But there isn't any difference in the fact that both of them have nothing to do with ideology. Chuck Schumer and me, and so I would like to know if you agree with me on that. 1-800-520-1234. 2 kinds of mass shootings, ideological and psychological. These are psychological. There's not much you can do about this at all, except protect yourself and have quick first response. Red flag laws, such as Arizona adopted, make a lot of sense to me. Not clear to me that this individual, either of these individuals actually, would have drawn a red flag, unless you're going to start throwing red flags for pornography and fistfights. The kid in Atlanta was wrapped up in pornography like a tire around an axle, and the kid in Boulder was paranoid from high school on and exhibited all the characteristics of an increasingly paranoid, out-to-get-me personality. And I don't know, maybe a red flag could have been thrown in Boulder by his older brother, who said he'd become increasingly paranoid. But Chuck Schumer went immediately on to the press conference, said this. Cut number 2.
The Senate legislative graveyard is over. 2 summers ago, after another horrific shooting, The Republican leader, then Majority Leader McConnell, promised that there'd be a debate in the Senate floor on gun violence. It never happened. Republicans seem averse to even wanting to talk about the epidemic of gun violence. Like the start of the COVID epidemic, their strategy is to downplay and hope the problem goes away. This Democratic-led Senate will be different. The Senate is not going to hide. We're going to debate and address the epidemics of gun violence in this country.
And so I don't know how they're going to address it because it remains subject to the 60-vote filibuster, and there's going to be precious little agreement. Ted Cruz, nevertheless, said something that a lot of people wanted, said, cut number 5.
Of not prosecuting felons and fugitives who try to illegally buy guns. If Grassley Cruz had passed, the gun crimes task force that it had created would have charged prosecutors with going after gun criminals, locking them up, and putting them in prison. That's how we prevent these. Now, we will learn in the coming days and weeks the exact motivation of the murderers in Atlanta and Boulder, Colorado. We'll learn what happened there. But we already know this pattern is predictable over and over and over again. There are steps we can take to stop these crimes. And you know what the steps aren't? The steps aren't disarming law-abiding citizens. Every year, firearms are used in a defensive capacity to defend women, children, families, roughly 1 million times a year in the United States. And the Democrats who want to take away the guns from those potential victims would create more victims of crimes, not less. I agree it's a time for actions. And by the way, I don't apologize for thoughts or prayers. I will lift up in prayer people who are hurting, and I believe in the power of prayer. And the contempt of Democrats for prayers is an odd sociological thing. But I also agree thoughts and prayers alone are not enough. We need action. Today, Chairman Grassley and I are introducing again Grassley Cruz, and I would ask Senate Democrats, including some of our newer colleagues who just got here, not to participate again in the shameful filibuster that this body engaged in 2013. Let's target the bad guys, the felons, the fugitives, those with mental disease. Let's put them in jail. Let's stop them from getting guns. Let's not scapegoat innocent law-abiding citizens, and let's not target their constitutional rights.
So that's Ted Cruz and Chuck Schumer representing the 2 points of view on what to do next. Greg in northeastern Pennsylvania driving a truck, 1-800-520-1234. Good morning, Greg.
Yes, Mr. Yu, I am so disappointed to hear what the president had to say yesterday, and it went right for the jugular, right for gun control. And I always hark back to the old saying, if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns.
So you don't think 2 tragedies in a week change anything? I don't, by the way. You're just agreeing with me.
I want to look and examine at the individuals who commit these crimes. And nobody wants to talk about the individuals that want to blame the individual. Oh, he had a mental problem, so he had to kill people to get it done. I'm sorry, I don't vote that excuse.
Well, they both did have mental problems, and they both did kill people. But that's my framework. It's either psychological or ideological. These are both psychological breakdowns.
Absolutely, both of them. And many of these shootings many of these tragedies that we've suffered were because of psychological breakdowns on individuals. They weren't watching television and somebody on TV told them to kill somebody.
Absolutely not. And Greg, thank you for that point. 1-800-520-1234. I'll take more. Let me ask you to turn your upset over violence in this country to a good motive. Head over to HughHewitt.com and consider a donation, if you will, to Food for the Poor. I've got a banner at the very top there. It's my last week of asking you to do this, and every day a few more hundred of you come in